Hi everybody, this is Anna Reads, and we are just going to jump right in to Unmentionable, the Victorian Lady's Guide to Sex, Marriage, and Manners by Teresa O'Neill. If I'm thinking right, I think we were on chapter 7, as I open immediately to chapter 8, because that's what I'm good at. Flip back. Do-de-do. Here we are. Page 115, chapter 7, Courtship, not talking your way into his heart. Take your umbrella out of your mouth. Sucking the handle of one's parasol is apparently a common practice among young ladies, either as a nervous habit or a dreadfully misguided attempt to display the possibilities of a sensual mouth. It's not as beguiling as you think and will not help you find a husband of character. Mrs. Florence Hartley, in her 1872 The Lady's Book of Etiquette and Manual of Politeness, a complete handbook for the use of the lady in polite society, addressed the issue most succinctly. Block quote, "What are you doing? Sucking the head of your parasol. Have you not breakfasted? Take that piece of ivory from your mouth. To suck it is unladylike, and let me tell you, excessively unbecoming. Rosy lips and pearly teeth can be put to a better use. Need I remind you? The only creatures out there who need ivory are the ones who grow it naturally. You do not need an elephant tusk." Now that we have that settled, we can address the finer points of making yourself man-worthy. I wonder where Luther is. Normally he'd have come running up by now. George Naphes was one of the first George Naphes was one of the first to write approachable, non-pornographic literature on the subjects of sex and hygiene. I'm sure if you go further back, someone who was not white did it first, but Western history, we're just going to kind of roll with it. And for this, we will give him due credit, no matter how queerly his words fall upon our modern ears. The Physical Life of Woman, Advice to the Maiden, Wife, and Mother, which Naphes began writing in 1869, devotes much attention to that golden time betwixt maidenhood and wifehood, the courtship. Seriously, where's my cat? Page 117, heading, Give him nothing. Still good advice. You are a prize to be won. Not quoting Aladdin, I'm trying really hard here. He must work to capture your affections and approval. Only the stupid and slutty trout leap out of the water to gain the fisherman's attention. The virtuous trout simply allows the sun to gleam briefly on her shining scales and then dives back into the shadowy depths. Only a skilled man with the finest of fake bugs can ream a metal hook through her mouth. You are that trout, and the metal hook you are about to be impaled on is holy matrimony. Naphes explains, block quote, "A wise provision of nature ordains that woman shall be sought. She flees and man pursues. The folly of modern reformers who would annul this provision is evident. Were it done away with, man, ever prone to yield to woman's solicitations, and then most prone when yielding is most dangerous, would fritter away his powers at an early age, and those very impulses which nature has given to perpetuate the race would bring about its destruction." You know, I really liked the squirrel scene in Sword in the Stone a whole lot better for that. That is to say, if there were ever to come a time when woman cast off the tradition of modest reluctance and approached men romantically, the epic loss of semen due to man's endless acquiescence would sap not only his strength, but his ability to propagate the human race. If I have any gentlemen watching, can you confirm I don't think that's true, but can you confirm? This fact is reinforced by my other favorite authors in this genre, Benjamin Grant Jeffers and J.L. Nichols, who wrote the tremendously popular Searchlights on Health, Light on Dark Corners, a complete sexual science and a guide to purity and physical manhood in 1895. Wow, that was a well-timed sunbeam. I didn't do that. They agree. Flirting is just murder on your testicles. My first grade teacher is walking by. And we're killing time. We are very much killing time. I'm reaching for my drink. This is embarrassing. I can't believe I just yelled that where my first grade teacher could hear it. She lives down the street from me. Let's see. There's definitely a block quote here. I'm going to read the block quote in just a minute. The young man who may take pleasure in the fact that he is the hero of half a dozen or more engagements and love episodes little realizes that such constant excitement often causes not only dangerously frequent and long-continued nocturnal emissions, but most painful affections of the testicles. Those who show too great familiarity with the other sex, who entertain lascivious thoughts, continually exciting the sexual desires, always suffer a weakening of power and sometimes the actual diseases of degeneration, chronic inflammation of the gland, spermatorrhea, impotence, and the like. Young man, beware. Your punishment for trifling with the affections of others may cost you a life of affliction. We're back to trifling. The only trifle I'm interested in comes from the Peacock Tea Room at the Georgia Renaissance Festival. Love you, Chef Randy. See, men can trifle with their excretions too, but men are weak when it comes to sexual restraint, which is why, my angel, it is so very, very important that women be ashamed of their bodies and their desires. Let's just say everything. Question every facet of yourself as a human, constantly, just to be safe. After all, only your self-loathing can keep the human race thriving. Says Naphis, to prevent such a disaster, woman is endowed with a great sense of shame, an invincible modesty, her greatest protection and her greatest charm. Let her never forget it, never disregard it, for without it she becomes the scorn of her own sex and the jest of the other. I think my 6th grade teacher could have written that. 119, heading, Fumbled Flirtings. Of course this would suggest a woman is powerless, unable to grease the cogs of love in her own favor by word or deed. Fie, darling. Women are much too wily for that. If you choose, you may engage in the delicate art of flirting. And I mean delicate. Nothing so crass as winking, saying hello, or smiling. You don't want him to think you're easy. No, Victorians had a whole language of love that is largely lost to us today. That of flirting through your fashion accessories. The scene in the second Princess Diaries movie with the art of the fan, wonderful. That was the second one, wasn't it? It's a very complex language with, in my opinion, much room for misinterpretation. Below are some examples of object flirtation as sampled from 1890's The Mystery of Love, Courtship, and Marriage Explained by Henry J. Wehman. I think I got that right. W-E-H-M-A-N. I think that's Wehman. I'm sorry, that truck had a large bloodhound in the back of it. Total distraction, my bad. I have included each action's intended secret meaning and what it probably actually meant whenever it occurred. Get that parasol out of your mouth, dear. You're going to need it. And this goes on for quite some time. This is where I would just encourage you to read the book. This section doesn't lend itself well to being read out loud, but I will try. Handkerchief flirtations. Dropping it in front of a man. The intended action is, we can be friends. Let's see, the actual meaning. Wow, I cannot believe I'm supposed to carry my own snot around with me all day. So disgusting. Ugh, maybe I can just drop it? Just pretend I lost it? I don't know about you, but I actually do carry a handkerchief sometimes. I live in Georgia, the pollen is maddening, and it's a lot more eco-friendly sometimes to just drop the thing in a nice sink of hot soapy water. Go through a lot fewer tissues that way. Some of these you may have actually heard of before. Twirling it in both hands. The intended there is, I am indifferent to you. Actual, bored. So bored. Church lasts 3 hours in this century? I don't know if you've ever been to a Catholic Mass, but a Catholic Mass can go on quite a long time, but your average Mass is about an hour. This one I do think we've touched on. Drawing it across the cheek. The intended there is, I love you. I'm not entirely sure how they came up with that, but however you need to say it. And oh, here we have the whole fan section. Carrying it in your left hand. Got birds having a fit up there. Carrying a fan in your left hand intends, I desire your acquaintance. The actual, I am left-handed, but I'm not supposed to be. Don't tell people. It's funny because I am left-handed. Placing it on the right ear. The intended, you have changed. Again, just go watch the scene with Julie Andrews and Anne Hathaway. It's much more endearing. Drawing it across the forehead. We are watched. I think she actually does that one. And here we go with parasol flirtations. Striking it on your hand. The intended, I am very much displeased. Well, I could have told you that. Nobody stands there whacking themselves in the hand with something if they're perfectly content. Let's see, folding it. The intended, get rid of your friends. Again, I'm not sure how all this evolved, but that's another show. Dropping a parasol, and somehow there the intended is, I love you. I suppose it's an invitation for him to pick it up, encouraging otherwise improper social interaction? This is all nonverbal. I'm autistic. Can we not? Glove flirtations. Biting the tips of the fingers. The intended, I wish to be rid of you very soon. Hey, burlesque performers, use that one. Turning them inside out. I hate you. You could do that in a glove peel too. Dropping them. I love you. Is this where we got the manic pixie dream girl who's always dropping things? All right, moving on from all that. It's probably anecdotal at best anyway. Page 123. Heading, shame, the sweetest blessing. Disingenuous and perplexing? Not something you'd want to try? Good. Because it was a test, my girl. Only harlots would do something as base as flirt. I mean, really, darling. Perhaps we should save time. Dispense with the gloves and bands altogether. You can just back your rump up and present for him like an alley cat in heat. No flirting. You are a lady. Jeffers and Nichols explain how the character of the flirting woman is desperately lacking in shame. Block quote. Who is the flirt? In the streets after dark, boisterous and noisy in their conversation, gossiping and giggling, flirting with first one and then another. All this talk about flirting, and now the birds are having a flirt fest up there. I'm just gonna wait while the extras cast of Sleeping Beauty here gets it together. We good? Let's try this again. Block quote. Who is the flirt? In the streets after dark, boisterous and noisy in their conversation, gossiping and giggling, flirting with first one and then another, will soon settle their matrimonial prospects among good society. Modesty is a precious jewel. No sensible man with a future will marry a flirt. Men don't find an outward display of joy appealing. Joy doesn't get the roast on the table by 6 p.m. sharp. Chit-chat doesn't help a woman survive having 9 babies. Flirtation leads to familiarity, a state of being that has wrenching consequences. As explained by Melville C. Keith's 1890s, what a title, The Young Lady's Private Counselor, The Care of Mind and Body, a book designed for young ladies to aid them in acquiring a life of purity, intellectual culture, bodily strength, and freedom from the many ills and annoyances of life that custom has placed on the sex. Yes, that is the title. Block quote. Undue familiarity cheapens a girl even in her lover's eyes and lays the foundation of future jealousy and possible murder. There is plenty of time for familiarity after marriage. Most murdered women are murdered by a spouse or intimate partner. That's not a joke at all. Our author does not diagram the transition from flirting to homicide, but does he really need to? I mean, who doesn't look at a teenager fluttering her eyelashes at some boy and think, that's going to end with 3 corpses in a filthy, blood-soaked basement? And let's not forget that flirting is a gateway to more serious and life-ruining forms of canoodling. Tell us more, Messrs. Jeffers and Nichols. Block quote. Kissing, fondling, and caressing between lovers. This should never be tolerated under any circumstances unless there is an engagement to justify it. And then only in a sensible and limited way. The girl who allows a young man the privilege of kissing her or putting his arms around her waist before engagement will at once fall in the estimation of the man she has thus gratified and desire to please. That is what happens when you ignore your God-given sense of shame, lambkin. He wants to put his arm around your waist. You bashfully allow him to. He realizes you're a dirty slut and wants nothing more to do with you. A plus B equals C, and C equals you dying alone with syphilis. Simple math to complement the rather creative science we've been citing, such as the purity of woman is doubly attractive and sensuality in her becomes doubly offensive and repellent. It is contrary to the laws of nature for a man to love a harlot, Jeffers and Nichols. There's still people spouting this kind of thing today. Please, I will probably read this later, but you may want to go ahead and read The Purity Myth, How America's Obsession with Virginity is Harming Young Women. It's by Jessica Valenti. Wonderful book. It's in the queue. Just look at it from his perspective. If she lets me put my arm around her waist, how many other arms have been there before mine? When I'm hugging her, I'm hugging every person she has ever hugged. Even worse, she appears to enjoy this warm, romantic touch. That isn't natural. It means her brain is addlepated, likely from too much masturbation, into a simmering state of pre-hysteria. She's a time bomb, a hussy time bomb. That is what your intended will be thinking as he hurries away from your poisoned touch. If he be wise, that is. If he's the sort who does not care about the vitality of his testicles, he may stay. But that's not the sort of man you want for a husband, is it? Just making sure how much we have left. Of course, as a woman, there are some physical reactions you can't help engaging in when you are in love. Just ask our dear Mr. Fowler, oh, this guy. All women with a loved man always thus set their breasts forward towards him, so that if in low dress, they would exhibit the upper part of their bosoms. Beaux, this sign tells you infallibly that your girl loves you, and its absence that she does not. Right. Oh, it may be inconvenient, you enjoying a chat with your mother, only to be struck into silence when, zing! Your beloved enters the room, and your breasts snap to attention like good soldiers saluting their commanding officer. But true love is hard work, darling. Must not make a Princess Bride reference, must not make a Princess Bride reference. Make your own Princess Bride reference. 127, heading, Eugenics, not just for Nazis. So how does one go about securing lifelong love without compromising virtue? Luckily, Jeffers and Nichols gave that quite a bit of thought. Now, be open-minded and try not to think of Hitler. I am so glad I did not write any of this, because I would never be able to sleep again. This is wonderful. That may be directly where your brain goes when you hear the word eugenics. But eugenics is about more than a moving wall of blonde, blue-eyed Teutons goose-stepping in perfect formation across Europe. It's also a wonderful musical. The producers, Springtime for Hitler, please. Musical theater enthusiasts, don't shoot me. The idea itself is fascinating, and it's the basic process used in agriculture and animal husbandry. The fastest mare is locked in a stable with the strongest stud, with the hopes that their vicious and horrifying love will produce a Kentucky Derby champion. Yes, horses mating is horrifying. I saw it once and almost crashed my car. Our turkeys are huge-breasted, and our tomatoes transport well with minimum spoilage because of selective breeding. So, what if, thought many a Victorian thinker with too much time on his hands, we did that with humans? Wouldn't that be marvelous? Strong people with balanced mentality would reproduce, and we could sterilize the weak, unintelligent, and sickly, or just forbid them to marry, and wait for the dregs of humanity to slowly die off. Could anything be more natural? Margaret Sanger, the visionary founder of Planned Parenthood, who broke many laws in her efforts to give women the right to control how often they got pregnant, believed in eugenics, which troubles many who want to lionize her today. How about don't lionize people? People have this really inconvenient tendency to be human. But lots of intelligent people believed in eugenics. They weren't all evil, and they weren't necessarily trying to breed a master race. Some of them just thought eugenics could help stem the endless tide of poverty, illness, and starvation that saturated the 19th century. They saw it as a way to stop a lot of suffering before it started. If you turn your head and squint real hard at it, you can almost kind of sort of see where they were coming from. especially, oh, but that's another show. It was also incredibly draconian and impossible to implement without violating basic human rights. But we're talking about an era when constantly drunk men labored in coal mines 14 hours a day and took their 11-year-old wives to watch a mentally disabled man accused of horse theft be executed in the center of town as a special treat. It was not a gentle time. Human rights was an idea brewing, but it brewed over a very low heat. Page 128, heading, Selecting the Right Head Lumps. I read that right, head lumps. I just wanted you to have a good grasp of the importance of eugenics and selective breeding when you read Jefferson Nichols' advice on selecting a mate. They sound a tad severe, I know, but hear them out. First, you must select your future husband scientifically. Block quote. If you court at all, court scientifically. Bungle whatever else you will, but do not bungle courtship. A failure in this may mean more than a loss of wealth or public honors. It may mean ruin, or a life often worse than death. The world is full of wretched and mismated people. Just watch any sitcom. This, of course, meant that hot-tempered women should marry cool-headed men, and shy ladies fit well with glad-handers. Jeffers and Nichols even extended this theory to body builds. Stout should marry slender, short should marry tall, and so forth. Block quote, bright red hair should marry jet black, and jet black, auburn or bright red, etc. And the more red-faced and bearded or impulsive a man, the more dark, calm, cool, and quiet should his wife be. All right, that actually sounds like Gomez and Morticia a little bit, so give an inch. The florid should not marry the florid, but those who are dark in proportion they themselves are light. Red-whiskered men should marry brunettes, but no blondes, the color of the whiskers being more determinate of the temperament than that of the hair. That is a fact. Hair color and complexion tones precisely indicate your personality. They just do. No, stop right there. It's the 19th century and you're a woman. I owe you no explanation. Hush now. Men are trying to teach you something that might one day save you from a murder-suicide pact. Phrenology allows you to tell whether a man will make a terrible husband just by asking him to remove his hat. Here's a tip from Jeffers and Nichols. Do not marry a man with a low, flat head, for however fascinating, genteel, polite, tender, plausible, or winning he may be, you will repent the day of your espousal. Conversely, there are appearances you want to avoid presenting so that you may attract the finest quality husband. You serve many purposes as a wife, but the most important is incubating and extruding his biological legacy from your body. You'd better look like you're up for the task. We've already covered man's attraction to full bosoms, youth, and healthy-hued skin, but there is more to consider. When it comes to a woman's possible deficiencies in pleasing a husband, there is always more to consider. Take it from Jeffers and Nichols. Block quote, wasp waists. Marrying small waists is attended with consequences scarcely less disastrous than marrying rich and fashionable girls. An amply developed chest is a sure indication of a naturally vigorous constitution and a strong hold on life, while small waists indicate small and feeble vital organs, a delicate constitution, sickly offspring, and a short life. Beware of them, therefore, unless you wish your heart broken by the early death of your wife and children. Note the practicality. Our authors don't question the virtue or amiability of the potential bride. They simply advise, in true eugenic fashion, that she is improper breeding stock and therefore should gracefully remove herself from marital considerations and live a short, sweet life, all alone, or maybe with some friends who also have teeny organs, and not pass the burden of her weakness on to children. Love just isn't in the cards for everyone, dear. If God wanted you to have a husband, he'd have given you thick, sturdy thighs and wide-set birthing hips. Page 131, heading, Love is blind, but everyone else is watching. Here you are. Although your physique and social class suggest your perfect scientific match is to be found within the limp embrace of an anemic Englishman in silk breeches, your heart rebels. Perhaps you're drawn instead to the damp brow of a hard-working freedman fighting all odds to build the life of his dreams. Or perhaps you are an elder lady who has over-ripened past the age of 25, and you are drawn to the kind eyes of a widowed Chinese landlord who wants nothing more than to adorn you in jasmine-scented robes and opium tinctures. Wow. Parentheses, I do not judge. That actually sounds like a lovely retirement plan. Or there's the gift shop at Epcot. We know that you can marry your first cousin, of course, as Her Majesty the Queen has done. You can marry a man whose parents came from a different Western European country, not Irish or Italian, obviously. They are very colorful people, best left to themselves. But the Swedes and Prussians are wholesome, sturdy folk. You can even marry a man 30 years your senior, provided he remains active enough to keep his spermatozoa hopping. But can you marry outside of your own race? Oh, bless your heart. Your stupid, stupid heart. Using the wrong fork can cause weeks of gossip. Calling a person you've known your whole life by their Christian name is coarse and improper. See, the first time we see Will and Elizabeth together in Pirates of the Caribbean, she blurts out his first name, and then she asks him to call her Elizabeth again. At least once more, Miss Swan. At least, unless you're a grizzled French-Canadian fur trapper who takes a widowed squaw into his shack in exchange for 3 beaver pelts, the answer is no. Naphes prides himself on dealing with hard truths that other Victorian writers are too timid to approach. Here he interprets the shocking situation of interracial marriage through the lens of pure science that he heard from a guy. Block quote. It is well known that the black race cannot survive a northern climate. Dr. Snow of Providence, Rhode Island, who has given great attention to the study of statistics, says emphatically that in New England, the colored population inevitably perish in a few generations if left to themselves. This debility no woman should wish to give to her children. I don't know what inevitably perish means, I'll admit, but that must be why no black people ever lived in wintry places like Chicago or New York. Wait a minute. Huh? That is but one of many reasons Naphes and every other writer of the era give for why color lines should not be crossed. You do not want to hear the others. To be sure, there were interracial marriages nonetheless, especially in the undeveloped western United States, but rarely among the class of people who owned oyster forks. The Victorian era provided the foundation for social change with the end of slavery and the beginning of suffrage and other civil rights movement. But just the foundation. 133, heading, Spinsterhood. Now, there is the remote possibility that you did not come here for the mutton chops. Perhaps you'd rather not fuss with the whole mess that men bring into your life. If that be true, you, my friend, are heading for what is called spinsterhood. It's the female equivalent of bachelor, except it's not sexy or fun, and everyone secretly despises you, although they'd be hard-pressed to say exactly why. Because after all, Spinsters are historically valuable members of society, according to a particular old maid identifying only as Pearl in an 1895 issue of The Monthly Packet. Block quote, "The old-fashioned, suppressed spinster of our own youth, was called upon before the days of trained nurses to help in illness in other people's houses. Not only brothers and sisters, but first and even second cousins claimed her services at births and deaths. She was as much excited by a love affair in any family with which she was intimate as the family itself, and was nearly always asked to weddings and christenings. Her life was full of reflected interest, and she took her share in the world, as one may say, by proxy." Sounds a bit like a fairy godmother. Pearl goes on to lament the modern spinster, who looks down on the simple wife and mother, and who insists that any woman who doesn't want to talk about cats and suffrage is a dullard. That's a B. What happened to the sweet spinster of old, who was exquisitely happy to watch as every woman in the family fell in love and went out to live her life, while she sated her passions sketching ferns? The old girl whom you could rely on to come nurse your family through highly contagious diseases, since, not to be callous, but God forbid she falls ill, it's not like she had a great deal to live for in the first place. We must again rely on Mr. Fowler to give us the real story on spinsterhood. It was a sickness affecting uppity women, and they suffered for their arrogance. Simply put, without a man in your life, you're already dead inside. Block quote, "You have no fond partner with whom to while away life's now tedious days and nights, in pleasant talks, walks, rides and visits, on whom to lean, with whom to live, nor any rosy children to love, amuse, wait on, and nurse you, but are like a barren, trailing vine, instead of clinging to some sturdy oak loaded with fruit, living a dreary life and awaiting a drearier death." Just moving right along. I know it's harsh, but honestly, darling, everyone is already thinking it. Here in the 19th century, you won't even get the courtesy of people wondering if you are a lesbian. They just assume you are excruciatingly undesirable. To put it in modern terms, an absolute dumpster fire. Hey, I own it. It's wonderful if you are young and pretty and can afford to be picky. But if you yourself are lumpy and obnoxious... Where's Luther? He's lumpy and obnoxious. You might have to disregard all the careful laws of choosing a good husband and settle down with the first flat-headed, foul-breathed, rapscallion miscreant who gooses your bustle. But if that's starting to look like your only option, my girl, you grab the ticket and ride that train straight to perdition. Block quote, "Old maids, think back how love cracked some of your admirers obviously once..." Wait, what? Old maids, think back how love cracked some of your admirers obviously once was. You should have improved that precious season. You went farther and fared worse, and now wish you had accepted what you could then have obtained. Yes, dear, let Brother Fowler's violent poetry wash over you. Don't fight it. It's so much easier to accept your feminine role in this world if you don't struggle. Sounds a bit like being eaten by a python. Block quote, "Your punishment increases with years. You may stifle first love and get along passably till 30, when nature revolts and chastises. Life becomes objectless or else distracted, or like a corn, perpetually aching. Enduring love's crucifixion long withers or crushes out. Age widens your loveless gulf. Society gives you no right to love nor be caressed, not even to reciprocate friendship, but shuts you in and out from men. Your age marks belie your assumed youth. Your bloom withers and perishes. Just you, your useless corn life, and a society that thinks your portion of the town's oxygen could be better used to ignite a drunk's flatulence for a good laugh at the alehouse. Find a man, chérie. And quick, bring forth the wedding bells. That has been Chapter 7 of Unmentionable, the Victorian Lady's Guide to Sex, Marriage, and Manners by Therese O'Neill. And this has been Anna Reads. If there's anything out there that you are interested in hearing me read, feel free to contact me at serenity_sweet13 on Instagram, on Twitter at serenitysweet13, no underscore. If you came to my YouTube channel from Facebook, feel free to contact me on Facebook, or just comment or direct message me here on YouTube. I'm gonna go enjoy the rest of my beautiful spring day. Ciao, darlings.